Joe Deninzon has got to be one of the busiest guys in rock music today. For over a year, he's been the violinist for the legendary band Kansas, and they're in the midst of their extensive 50th anniversary tour. But Joe's other focus, his group Stratospheerius, which we have talked about before in the past, a melding of rock and jazz and classical and a bit of everything else. Stratospheerius has a new album coming out on October 11th. It's called Impostor, and there's an exclamation mark after Impostor, and it is the culmination of 6 years of work. I'm Mark Boardman of Sonic Perspectives. With us today from Stratospheerius is my good buddy, longtime friend, Jason Gianni, the drummer, and Joe Deninzon himself. Welcome to Sonic Perspectives.
Thanks for having us.
Always
So
great to be you, Mark.
I,
Yeah.
I really need to be candid about this. As a former reporter, I've got to put things up front. There was a crowdfunding effort for imposters that went about, to which I contributed. So I'm not exactly an unbiased observer from the sidelines. Uh, so take that into account. I'm a fan of Stratospheerius. I'm a fan of these two guys and all that they do. So this is going to be an extremely great album. I can tell you that right now. Uh, Joe, 6 years though, 6 years to come up with the album.
I want to say something. Thank you for
Yes.
your support. And Jason's over at my house right now. He's actually in my studio basement, and I'm up in my daughter's room. And guess what we're doing? We're like signing and packing CDs to send out to the contributors, yourself among them, as we
Okay.
speak. In between doing interviews, that's what we're doing right this moment.
Excellent.
So,
I look forward to the CD.
Oh, you're gonna,
um,
yeah, it's great.
I,
you're gonna
I'm
dig it.
sure. Six
So
years though.
yeah, well, a bunch of things happened. Okay, we started in 2019. We came out with the first single. We recorded 4 songs right off the bat, and we every few months we would come out with a single, and we kept writing and recording. And then the pandemic hit, and we had a lot of things going on in our personal lives. And at the same time, we were mixing and mastering and video editing the double live album, which we came out with last year.
Right.
So my attitude was, let's keep writing new songs and recording them and keep working on the live record. And whatever is ready first out of those 2 projects, we will release first. So the live one was ready first, and that came out last year. That was a massive project. So we were really multitasking. But this one, it kept going. The second thing that slowed us down, the mixing engineer is Rich Mauser, who is super busy. So every time I would send him a new song, he would go, I'll fit you in between the next Transatlantic and Neil Morris Band project that I'm doing." So I'm like, you're mixing my record collection, so that's fine. And it was worth the wait. And thirdly, I joined Kansas, so that has kept me very busy for the last 2 years. So things just kept being postponed for those reasons. And then we were deciding which label to put it out on, and we're in discussion with a few different labels, and that delayed us as well. We had to make an informed decision. But yeah, things just take time, and we're really meticulous about the music. We want it to be as good as it can possibly be, and it's worth the extra time spent. People don't realize how much work goes into making a record.
Sure, sure.
So yeah.
Jason, you contributed quite a bit musically
Mhm.
as well as drum wise to this one. Uh, did the whole project, I want to say, did it go into different areas when it goes that long, 6 years, of areas that you might not have anticipated when you got things started 6 years ago?
Uh, yes, it did. And unlike other bands where where a lot of bands spend a lot of time together, or even like in Neil Morris's case, where they kind of block out a certain amount of time and meet at Neil's studio and write for 2 weeks and record for a certain amount of time. We don't really have the opportunity to do that because we're all involved with so many different projects. We could go through the litany of amount of things that all of us are doing. So a lot of what we do is done in sort of smaller spurts. And what has sort of kind of happened, where it's sort of landed is that Joe and I have become a little bit of a writing team together, and a lot of it is more just in the way of doing a lot of stuff at home. You know, technology has really helped us.
Mhm.
Doing stuff at home where we send stuff back and forth and see if it works. We write stuff, program stuff first, see if it works, and then maybe we get together and record it or record it at home and see if it works. So it's a lot of different sort of we don't really have like a set date where we're like, okay, we're going to record this song right now. We do a lot of tossing back and forth and seeing if it sounds good and that sort of thing. And then we've been kind of lucky in the last couple songs. We've gotten them done, and Rich has mixed them, and it's everything we've wanted from them. But to answer your question a little bit more succinctly, we really haven't had the time to kind of sit down as a group and say, okay, we're blocking out a month of time. Let's get it done.
Mhm.
I think we would have a little bit more success in other areas by doing that. But the 6 years or the years that it's taken us to do this had really allowed us to, like, kind of an erector set, put all this stuff together and be like, we really want it done this way. We really want it done that way, and not really settled for anything.
Mhm.
We all have home studios, and we really have been into the idea of recording our parts at home and trading tracks, but that does slow things down significantly.
Hmm.
You know,
Mhm. When you go through a process like that, that's not, as you say, Jason, setting aside a month or so and let's all get together and here we'll do this, et cetera, et cetera. How do you know when you've reached the end, when you've reached a conclusion and this is what we want?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, well, having our own studios really helps the getting, 90% of the way there, where we can do a little bit of our own mixing and uh, uh you know uh it doesn't sound like we've recorded it through like sort of some AM radio or something, so we can get the idea of like, okay, this is going to work. This sounds pretty good. And then, having someone like Rich mix it will really make it come to life. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Sometimes you also have to kind of know where to stop. There are times where you kind of just keep working on stuff and keep working on stuff, and then it just becomes, it almost goes over the edge on the other side of things where it's, well, now this is crap. This we don't have to keep working on this. But I don't know. I also think that Joe and I have a good read for each other's minds of where we want to kind of end up. And Joe, we were joking about this on another interview that Joe has a way of listening to something and going, let me sleep on this. And then usually wakes up the next day and goes, yeah, I like it. That's great. So I know his window of time, basically,
Mhm.
yeah, I might be like grumble, grumble, grumble. Man, that no, and then when I come around, it's funny.
Yeah.
I'll bitch about something, but yeah, I mean, it's funny because sometimes I'll ask Bill Hubauer to send his tracks, and he'll be out on tour or doing something else, and it'll just take him a while, so we have to wait for him. But then when he does, it's 30 tracks, and they're all amazing. And I'm like, I got to sort through this and figure out what I'm going to send to Rich to mix because it's all so good. That's time-consuming, challenging thing. And then Michelangelo, our guitarist, will do the same thing. There'll be stacks and stacks of really awesome guitar tracks. So everybody just over overserves,
Overserves,
Yeah,
overcompensates. Yeah. Yeah.
not overcompensates,
Well,
but
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
just goes above and beyond,
Mhm.
and it's we're lucky to have that, but then you have to make a lot of hard choices
Right,
all the
right.
time.
Hope that
Um,
everybody is going to be accepting of what those choices are.
and sometimes, like from the parts that Bill sends, everything will be great, but even with the 30 parts, there'll be one part that I really wanted in the song that he didn't play. So I got to go back to him and say, there's one thing, can you add it, please? And he'll send it. But if we were in the room together, that would happen instantly.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, you just put in the time at whatever the project needs.
Mhm.
There's no race.
The album called Imposters, and the concept, as I understand it, maybe as I live it, is wondering if you or any individual, even one who reaches a level of success, is not real, if they're fake, if somehow if people looked at them closely, they would see that there's nothing really there. Do you guys feel that at all? Do you feel like you're imposters at all with the success you've had?
Well, the title track is about that, and
Yeah.
it stemmed from a colleague of mine who's a really successful musician who I admire for many years, telling me she suffers from imposter syndrome, and I was thinking to myself, you out of all people, you're like amazing, And I realized everyone goes through that. I'm
Hmm.
sure I know I have. I'm sure Jason has. I'm sure you have. It's just something we all go through. And but the underlying premise of the song is all the all the wrong people have way too much confidence, and all the right people have not enough. It crosses over into like world leaders or people who know they're imposters, but kind of you know double down on that and don't
Hmm.
and have this cynical worldview and sometimes don't lead us well.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's the duality of that. Um, so that the first half is about imposter syndrome that we all suffer. A lot of people go through, and the second half is about the real imposters who are running the earth into the ground. So
Which we won't name names in this
no, I don't
particular.
want to get into that. I'll let Jason jump in anytime he
Yeah,
wants with
Jason,
what he does.
Jason, you going through that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think, my experience with working in the music industry is that you're always facing people with different levels of ego. And sometimes it's easy to deal with people with that, where you can sort of tame them or you kind of know their soft spots. And then other times, you really deal with, especially in the artistic world, you'll deal with people who are very, very narcissistic. And you can't really knock them off their perch, or if there's something that goes wrong, it's never their fault. It's
Mhm.
never, it's never, the blame is always, there's always pointing fingers.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's a tough thing to deal with, especially if you have to deal with them on an intimate basis of gigging with them on a regular basis, or being in a Broadway pit with them on a regular basis or something like that. It's very, very tricky to deal with someone like that, where you're always walking on eggshells,
Hmm.
so yeah, it's a tough situation. And I'm not shy, but I'm very I'm like what Joe said, the person who doesn't have enough confidence often, and I've had to work on that. And it's always weird running up to that ego line and sort of backing off of it and
Yeah.
doing this.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's a fine line to walk.
Yeah. Tricky.
Mhm. Yeah,
Most
all
most
wrestling
people.
with it.
No, go ahead, Joe.
No, I just said we're all wrestling with that.
We're
Yeah,
wrestling with it.
yeah,
Yeah.
we are. You mentioned how the second half of the song is broadened it out into more of a world view. A lot of your songs do that, or are sort of your analysis of the world and how you see it. I mean, even looking at Outrage Olympics, uh, taking a look at cancel culture and what's going on in the world. You have some particular viewpoints on things.
Yeah, I mean, I like to keep my songs kind of open to interpretation. I don't like to really plant myself on one side or the other, although I have my personal opinions about things. Um, but the concept of Outrage Olympics, which we just released as a single and a video 2 weeks ago, um, it's a critique of cancel culture, how we're all kind of spying on each other, and if somebody says something wrong or is misconstrued, they could lose their job or lose their reputation. Um, but it also goes broader into the surveillance state, that we're all under surveillance from the government, from each other.
Hmm.
It's kind of the dystopian present, the dystopian reality that we all live in, and the video kind of ties into that. And I think most people will agree with that point of view. You
Hmm.
know.
It's a weird world we live in. That video really is pretty remarkable. You guys put a lot of time and effort into that one, didn't you,
We
Jason?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely.
that was a
Uh,
lot of work.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe had been storyboarding that for a long time.
Yeah.
He had a lot of really good ideas right off. I've seen it yet, but the whole idea of the surveillance and looking through a black and white camera, and then kind of coming back to reality of filming it normally, and it was I think it came out, it far exceeded our expectations. We wanted to outline it in a certain way, and it came out really, really great. And Yeah, it's just a beautiful piece of work, and couple it with what Rich did with the mix and what we did with the orchestration. It was everything I wanted to get out of it, and I think the message comes across really well too.
Uh,
Um, I'm a little less when I write lyrics. I'm a little less uh, sort of Joe is very issue oriented,
Yeah.
and I'm always scared to get into that. I think he's got a great way of sort of skirting the line, like he says, and leaving it open for interpretation. But I sort of get a little bit more into the personal side of like how yourself is being affected by what's going on in the world, how you're how it affects your family, how it affects your mind, how it affects, and I think I'm sorry, Outrage Olympics is a very kind of personal song to me too,
Mhm.
as far as how I feel about being losing sense of privacy
Yeah.
mhm.
and that sort of thing. Always feel
Yeah.
like you're doing this, and are your decisions always being sort of looked at as being wrong and being coming down on you and things like that. So
You're
yeah,
always looking over your shoulder, you know.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, I just want to, before I forget, I want to give a shout out to David P. Levin, who directed that video and helped me edit it. We spent over 100 hours editing that thing while I was on the road, and it was a ton of work. We just, every spare second I would tweak it and tweak it and tweak it. So he helped me out a lot. So
Yes.
Do either of you or both of you, beyond the audio emphasis that is music, do you also see things in video terms at the same time?
some things, I wrestle with it. It's hard to, I'm not a lot of musicians aren't as visually inclined,
Right. Mhm.
certain songs have a very clear concept and I kind of have an idea of what I want to do with it video wise. Other ones I really have to think like what is how could we represent this visually? Yeah. What about you, Jason?
Well, first of all, as Mark knows, I'm lucky enough to be married to somebody who is a videographer, photographer, editor, blah blah blah, and now my daughter is following in that path. So I'm always kind of around that. But there was a funny meme I saw recently and I don't remember the exact action of the meme. I think it was somebody like really heavily rolling their eyes, and it said something like, "All musicians now knowing they have to create interesting content on top of music as well, for social media."
Another one
And
you're
yeah, we've like entered a
yeah.
world where like I didn't I have a master's degree, and so does Joe, in studying our instruments. I didn't go for videography. I didn't go
Yeah.
for some sort of quality of that crap. You know what I mean? So now it's all of a sudden we're like, I'm spending more time. Yesterday I had to edit a video, and I was like sitting in front of the computer for 2 hours. I'm like, what? I could be preparing for this gig I have at the end of October. What am I doing?
You gotta be a jack of
So
all trades. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's like the whole, but we also studied, it's interesting. It's that both of us studied the idea of being a jack of all trades, of studying different styles of music, and we're both authors, and we're both this and that and the other thing. So this is a big thing, but add it to the list. Now we
Mhm.
have to think about video. We have to think about editing. We have to think about content. We have to think about how we look on camera, things like that. If
Sure.
someone's not going to do it for us, we have to do it ourselves.
Mhm. Mhm.
At the same time, it's good to have control over your content. So I can't imagine someone else editing this video for me. It would have cost me a fortune. And I would always have to be telling them what to do because it wouldn't be
Yeah.
quite right,
You wouldn't like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Same
Yeah.
thing with the live DVD, which we did. I edited most of that myself. I had to learn how to use Final Cut Pro during the pandemic. Um, but speaking of Jason's wife, Jody, she designed the cover art for the new
Yes.
album.
Mhm.
Thanks.
And
She
did an
did.
amazing
It was
job. So
great.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank
It,
you.
it helps to have another half who can help out on some things like
Keep
that.
in the family, yeah.
She's not always agreeable. She's not agreeable to do it, but
No, she's been
yeah.
amazing.
No, she's been great. She's been
It's so
incredible,
great,
and
so
she,
helpful and patient.
yeah, Yeah, she really we're both she and I are both very big fans of Hugh Syme, who did all the Rush and Megadeth records and that sort of thing. So she's very into that like artistic-y, almost science fiction look
Sure.
sort of thing. Yeah, yeah.
which
Here,
is what we
here,
wanted for this. Yeah.
here's your trivia note for the day. Hugh Syme lives in Newcastle, Indiana now.
He does?
Yes, he lives
Wow.
there because his daughter lives there. And Newcastle is what, 20,000 people? It's a town that's been dying for 30 years because the auto industry died off. And
Right.
he lives there in Newcastle, Indiana, about 45, 50 miles due east of Indianapolis.
Amazing.
You're in Indianapolis, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Amazing.
it really is amazing. I don't think the people in Newcastle understand who this guy is.
Which is maybe why he wanted to live there.
That's
Right.
entirely possible.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to come up and yeah, Rush, Rush.
Yep. Yep. James Hetfield lives in Vail, Colorado, the least heavy metal place you could possibly imagine.
Yeah,
That's
right.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Wine sippers and quiche eaters.
Skiers.
Yeah. Let me ask you about one of the other songs, because that's Chasing the Dragon, which is sort of the prog epic that wraps things up. And you described that as being sort of about a midlife crisis, or is it a midlife crisis unto itself?
So it's interesting how this came about. So back maybe it was 2021 around thereabouts. Jason always sends me ideas that he has periodically, melodic ideas and riffs. So he had this 90-second MIDI demo of some cool riffs, and I'm like, this is pretty cool. I could do something with this. And around that time, I had been thinking about just people my age. We were mid 40s, pushing 50, going to going to a lot of these prog festivals, and I see a lot of guys. The middle-aged rockers, the aging rockers, who are still kind of, they're kids that never grew up. They still have a band. They're still putting out records. They're still chasing whatever dream of rock stardom they had when they were maybe 17. They're still at it, And I'm like, we're all so pathetic, Look at us, man. Who are we? Why are we doing this? What's the goal now? What's the dream? So I was kind of making fun of that, of myself and my friends who are all in the same boat and same age group. No one really writes about this kind of stuff, as far as I know. And I thought, I'm chasing the dragon. And to me, the dragon was that childhood illusion, if you will, of stardom or fame and fortune, whatever you thought of it when you got into music. This was where my head was at in 2021, 22. I was blessed to start working with Kansas, and I'm not, but around. I think we all go through this. We start evaluating our life and our life choices, and did I achieve what I wanted to in my life? I'm pushing 50. Where am I at? What's it all about? Should I change course completely? So I was wrestling with that a little bit, but I didn't want the song to be dark. I also wanted it to be a little funny because I was also making fun of myself and my friends. So that's kind of the concept behind it, and it's a character that's a combination of a lot of people I know, and there's a concept. It's an 8-part song. I guess it's a mini rock opera where at the beginning he's a child, then he grows up and has this mundane existence. Then he meets a girl who tries to set him straight, and then he kind of stubbornly refuses and goes down with the ship, or does he? That's kind of the general idea of the song. And we kept adding, like I would sketch out the first part and then send it to Jason, and he would come up with a whole new section and then send it back to me, and I'd come up with a whole new section. It just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And in the end, I think it was like 200 tracks. It took like 2 years to produce this song. And Rich Mauser had quite a time mixing this beast. But then again, he's mixed songs much longer and much more complicated. So I knew he was the guy to do it. He wouldn't flinch, And he was very patient and understanding and got it, and understood what we were trying to do with it, So that's pretty much it. And now we're doing like little teasers. Like every 2 days, I made like a little documentary about each section that I post to whet people's appetite about the album. So I just posted one this morning.
Jason, we've got the cards out on the table in terms of Joe. You, how old are you? You look like you're 18 still, but
God, you're my best friend, pal. Uh, I'm gonna be 52 in December.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm older than Joe. Yeah,
And look at,
I have good genes. I'm
Uh,
very lucky.
I
I
would
have,
say so.
yeah, I have mom's genes and her hair, and yeah,
Keep the hair, believe me.
yeah,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
jealous of the hair
yeah.
for sure.
Yes. Share the hair.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't always feel as youthful as I look. Let's put it that way. But
Yeah.
we all deal with the growing pains. No pun intended, of getting older.
Well, talking about the midlife crisis,
Yeah,
per se,
yeah.
would the 22-year-old Joe or the 22-year-old Jason be surprised where the one that's 50-ish is today?
Um,
Or is this sort of along the path you expected?
I'll let Jason go first.
well, I think there are certain things when I look back. I think there are certain things that I carved a path and said, yeah, this is going to happen, or this is what I'm going to do. I come from my family is, although my father was a hobbyist bass player, he was a Wall Street guy. I have some doctors and lawyers in the family, so a lot of growing up was about the fear of not being able to be helped, to be successful, to have any sort of any hand helping me through the business. And I set a lot of stuff up ahead of time by going to school and getting these different degrees and getting into all these different styles of music that really carved this path out for me that I'm still doing today. So
Mhm.
there are things that I'm like, yeah, I set up to do that. But there's also elements of success and then not success that I look at today and go, well, why didn't this happen for me? Or why, uh, how come I got into that? That was strange. Or that luck streak was short-lived, but it happened, but why? And so there's always questions and there's always things. But look, Joe and I were both very blessed to have made a living and have houses and have families and live the American dream doing what we love. So can't really ask more for that.
No.
Yeah.
Joe?
As for me, I dreamed of being a rock star when I was a kid, and for 25 years I worked as a freelance violinist in New York. And one deep lesson I learned is the definition of success is different for different people. And to be a working musician and be able to do the variety of different things I got to do, most of which were fun with really great musicians and great people and great friends and diverse, great diversity of musical styles and genres. That's an honor in itself, and I felt fortunate to do that, and that could be considered successful.
Mhm.
But I think if I spoke to my 22-year-old self, never in my wildest dreams would I imagine that I'm working with a band like Kansas,
Mhm.
and getting more love and recognition for my original music. So I wake up and count my blessings every day, and I worked my butt off for many, 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 many years.
Hmm.
And it's one of those things where you aspire to it, but at the same time, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, "Oh, it'll never happen." You know, Nothing is promised in life. So, but I just knew that what I really loved doing, that I couldn't live without being a musician.
Mhm.
It's like the air I breathe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
What I have noticed, this is probably more endemic for the prog field and genre than any other, is there's more opportunities for good musicians and composers once they hit their 50s even, or Neil Morris in his 60s, um, than there are in other genres. A lot of rock musicians, by the time they hit 60, many of the great ideas have sort of gone off and they're playing what they used to play over and over again. But in Prague, there's a productivity that really seems to blossom once you hit middle age.
I think you can, in any genre, you can come up with your best work once you hit middle age or once you get older. And I think it's a myth that your best work is only when you're young. You know, even outside of Prague, I think that myth is perpetuated by the mass media. But I will agree with you that in the world of Prague, you can be at any age and come up with great music, and people don't care how old you are, and they just want to hear good music. And that's why I love the genre and I love the fans. You know, um, Jason, if
And
you want to.
I know I've matured. I'm like I'm a way different musician than I was when in my 20s. You know, like an athlete, you might be in the top shape physically,
Hmm.
but there were so many things up here that are not the same as it is now. You know, from a decision standpoint of how you go about your everyday life to even just writing of just like, okay, I would write like "Wah," like crazy and obnoxious when I was younger, and now I have to think about audience and I have to think about the other people that I'm working with, and I have to think
Sure.
about all that kind of stuff. So there's it's a weird. I wish our brains were connected to our bodies, and a lot of
Well, they
times
are.
they're not. They're just,
Oh,
well, you know what I mean. Well, mine's in a different body,
yeah.
but I mean, a lot of times, age wise, they're just not in sync with each other,
Hmm.
you know. And I think I'm thinking the best I've ever thought and felt about that my whole life right now. But I know my body's not the way it was when I was 26 either.
Hmm.
So
But I think, with age, you have the wisdom of experience and you have a different perspective. And
absolutely,
there's
yeah.
always something you can say, and as long as it's honest, you know.
Hmm.
I think here's an interesting thing. I had this epiphany that people talk about three chords and the truth. All you need is three chords and the truth. You could have 1,000 chords and the truth, but the constant is the truth. If the
Hmm.
music
Yeah.
is honest, doesn't matter how complex or simple it is, as long as people connect with it, you know.
Yep.
Right.
So
And it has to come from you naturally too. If you
yeah.
you can't fake your way through it and really attract an audience for any period of time.
I think if your intent is to be cool and popular and attract a certain kind of person, you're not gonna succeed most likely. If people can intuitively tell when something is contrived and pandering to them.
Mhm.
If it comes from you, it's your story. You can't be wrong. It's your story. It's your soul, And people, I have faith that people connect with that.
Yeah.
Maybe not everybody, and that's okay. You're not going to please everybody. You don't have to, you know. But all it takes is a handful of the world population to connect with what you're doing, and you have your audience.
Hmm. Hmm. When I used to do job interviews back when I back when I was the type of guy who got behind a desk occasionally and had to do some work, um, one of the most ridiculous, stupid questions, but it got asked every time was, okay, so what do you see yourself doing in five
Mm.
years? I couldn't see what I was going to do in 5 minutes, but you know how that goes. Um, you've reached this level. You've both talked about it, a level of success, a level of comfort, maybe contentment, um, in terms of the music that you're putting forth and producing. Do you look ahead at all to see where you think this is headed, or is it just better to say, now let's just go with what we got right now, and tomorrow will take care of itself?
I'll let you first. You asked about the 22-year-old self before, and one of the things that the 22-year-old self thought about this age was that things would slowly start to trail off, and that we would
Mhm.
just start to kind of wrap things up, if that made sense. I never knew financially what that would entail or what I would make or that sort of thing, but um, and in the last couple of years, I've never been busier. I've never been more successful. There's so many things, and I don't speak for Joe, but we both have so many things going on right now. So what I initially pictured of, okay, let's kind of like start to wind these things down and maybe move to Florida with the blue-haired people, is not really kind of in the cards, for a variety of reasons, but a lot of it is the work and striking while the iron is hot, as they say. So, but So I don't really have a picture of 5 years, and a lot of it is based on the idea of my calendar being so scattered, and my wife's trying to plan things, and me saying, "Honey, I can't think past Wednesday," that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I really don't know. I mean, I hope for certain things, Stratosphere is definitely being one of them, as well as some other things I have in my life. I hope for things to really bloom and blossom. I always say it's like lighting little pilot lights everywhere, and then you pour gasoline on it, and it's, I hope that happens, and in which case my perspective of the next 5 years would change greatly. But we just don't know, and I don't know if it's the right time to really plan that right now.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Joe?
As for me, you look around. I mean, I'm doing everything I would want to do. I like where I live. I like what I'm doing. Knock on wood. Just want to keep it going and keep doing what I'm doing, and hopefully people will come to know Stratospheerius more and enjoy this album, and hopefully we'll make more albums, and hopefully Kansas will keep touring. We'll see how long that goes. I'm going to ride that wave and just enjoying the moment. One thing, I look at Richard Williams, the guitarist,
Yeah.
the last original guy on that stage, and I was telling Jason, I think Richard's attitude is he wants to be carried off the stage in a box.
Yeah.
So the other guys have retired. Richard is just, ride it out till the end, and that's kind of my attitude. I love it so much. I can't imagine just moving to Florida with the blue hairs. I mean, I can enjoy chilling out on the beach for a while, but then after a while, I'm like, I got to go back and play more music.
Mm-hmm.
Retiring implies that you don't enjoy what you're doing and you just want to go fishing. So I'm a lifer, man. I just love what I do, and I want to keep doing it as long as possible. And as long as you got to keep your health. You never know what's around the corner.
No, that's right.
You really don't. So you just got to appreciate every day. I've had some crazy things happen to me this year that I didn't expect, in my family, and so it's a matter of luck and fate. So you just have to enjoy the day and hope for the best and appreciate what you have, I think. So
It's great to hear that from you two guys, because we live in a world of discontent. People are they walk around, you can see it in their way they carry themselves. They're just not happy with their lives. And to be able to find contentment in what you're doing, in not just professionally, but in family and other aspects, you're blessed. You really
Hmm.
are.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't ever take any day for granted,
oh,
I think
absolutely.
I think the biggest question for me coming out of school was like, I always would kind of sort of joke, if I had a kid, would I be able to buy them a bike? You know what I mean? And I am. So
Yeah,
I am
there you go.
successful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, there's always times, I mean, I still have a lot of questions about my career. I still have a lot of things that I ponder, of just like I was saying before, just like I'm not really sure why this didn't happen. I've been working nonstop since I was 18. I have not ever stopped, so there's always a little bit of I'm not bitter at all, but always just questions,
Sure.
that kind
Hmm.
of thing. But with those questions, I studied with Dom Famularo for a little bit, a famous drummer, and he said a really good thing for me one time. He said, if you're frustrated, it's actually a good thing because it means you keep going. If you're disappointed, it's a bad thing because it means you want to quit.
Yeah.
And I never get to that point. I'm always a little frustrated. I'm always a little questioning, but you never get disappointed. And like Joe said, like, yeah, I'm going to sit on a beach for 10 minutes and be like, the hell am I doing? I want to get back to being on stage or
Yeah.
teaching or something.
My attitude is like, you have to remind yourself why you do it. It has to be for the love of doing it. Because
Yeah.
if I lost everything tomorrow, I would probably go play on the street, but I would just keep playing, and I would just keep going, and that's it. If it's ulterior motives like money and fame and fortune, and then you're setting yourself up for disappointment 99.9% of the time.
But
You
that's
have
some
to.
of the wisdom that comes with age too, because when we were all younger and wanted to be rock stars, the fame and fortune was an integral part of that image.
It's a
At
myth
least
that you're sold.
yeah,
Yeah, But the thing is, you do that. You that's part of what entices you. I think part of maybe what enticed me, but the greater part was just the love of the music. I
Yeah.
think Jason would agree, and
Hmm.
that carries you through. You know, and
Mhm.
then you get older, you realize, 99% of musicians are just working musicians. They're not famous, and to the maybe the layman, they might seem like failures. Most people who are outside of the music world think you're either famous or you're a nobody. And
Right.
there's a huge swath of working musicians who are, doing a lot of cool things
Yep.
in their day to day, teaching, playing shows, playing with bands or orchestras or whatever it is. They're making a living and happy and content. Yeah, the music business is challenging and unpredictable, but it's also rewarding in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So I think the public perception of what a musician is a little skewed. You have to constantly kind of educate people of, do you know what Jason, I'm sure knows what
Oh
I'm,
yeah. I mean, I always say that like, especially Joe and I both work on Broadway, and I always say that like I always feel like all those incredible musicians are the ones that are sort of keeping the motor of the business going. You don't see it all the time, but there are a zillion amazing players in all the instruments in these cities, and without that, there wouldn't be a foundation for the bigger ones to stand on. You know?
there's also, I got into the wedding scene. I played thousands of weddings,
Did you?
and
Hmm.
some of the greatest musicians I ever met played those weddings with me.
In the
Like guys,
Northeast, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
guys that toured with Sinatra and Buddy Rich, and were Bruce Springsteen, or Steely Dan, were on those bandstands with me, and being creative and having fun and pulling 1,000 songs out of their butts, at a moment's notice. And
Yeah,
that's a skill and an art that is highly underappreciated.
it is.
And it's
Absolutely.
kind of considered the bottom of the totem pole in a lot of people's eyes,
Hmm.
that kind of work. But it's actually rewarding in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
So
Well, if you can make a living at music, you've had a certain level of success to begin with, because there are certainly a lot of musicians who are, well, they have primary jobs and then they do music when they can just to fulfill their souls.
which
It's,
is also cool.
yeah,
It
yeah,
that makes that if you feel fulfilled, you know. Um, in fact, actually, our keyboardist Bill Hubauer, he works for Adobe.
yes.
He's
Hmm.
a programmer for Adobe, and but he's touring. He tours with Neil Morris and Crack the Sky, and he's a very busy musician. But he doesn't want to give up his day job because it makes him very happy. I mean, financially too, but also he just feels fulfilled doing that job too. Everybody has their own meter as to what makes them happy and feel successful.
I remember one of the first times I talked to Bill. This has probably been back 12 or 13 years back when I first met Jason.
Hmm.
And I knew that he worked for Adobe and did programming. And I said, "So, when are you going to quit that and go into music full time?" He looked at me like, "Are you out of your mind? I'm a programmer. I'm a programmer.
A
I'm a
steady
programmer
job,
who
man.
does
Yeah,
music."
yeah. He was doing well. He works from the tour bus. When he was with Neil Morse, he
Yeah,
would be on his laptop on the tour bus all day
yeah.
and then play the show at night.
By the way, I think
Um,
Bill, as a part of Stratospheerius, boy, he adds a great deal to what you
Oh,
do. His multiple talents just really give you another step up.
I mean, he's really part time with us because he's so busy. We
Yeah.
get him when we can. But we're lucky we got him on this album. And I didn't really use keyboards with the band for a while, long time. It was a
Right.
4 piece, and
Hmm.
a lot of these songs it just takes it to a whole other level,
It
especially
does.
what he does. I can't imagine the songs without his
yep.
contributions.
Mm-mm.
So,
Well, with all the busyness that you guys have, you going to do any live gigs?
well, we haven't announced it yet, but we just booked. I guess it's our CD release party and my 50th birthday bash, December 15th at the Williams Center. And we're going to have Randy McStein and Dave Bainbridge opening for us and playing with us. So that's going to be, we just confirmed that yesterday. We're going to be starting the promotional rollout for that. But up until that point, I'm pretty much on tour with Kansas all
Yeah.
the time. So there's not a lot of opportunities for us to play out. So we'll really play live a handful of times a year,
Hmm.
and we make it a big event with Stratospheerius.
I
The last
think
time, yeah.
I'm sorry, Joe, please. I'm sorry.
No, the last thing we did was in June. We did a some
Yeah.
Yeah.
date. Yeah.
You know, ever since I've been in the band, which has been almost like 8 years now, uh, I think that the the makeup of how we go about promoting the band has changed in regard to the fact that uh it was a band that like Joe just loves to play and we would just sort of just play anywhere and everywhere. But I think the idea of both of us playing with bigger artists and the band jumping up a lot of steps in popularity and that sort of thing has enabled us to sort of cut back on some of those type of gigs and really save it for the really important festivals and things that really matter most. And if this record, at some point, which we hope, allows us to do open up for Porcupine Tree on a world tour, well, we're gonna do that. You
Are
know
you
what I mean?
listening?
Yeah. But right now it's more, Progstock and those type of festivals that allows us to really save up and go out and really make something of it, record it, make it a live double DVD like we did with the previous Progstock
Hmm.
performances, things like that to really make it important for those
Sure.
moments.
Done a bunch of shows at the Iridium, which went really well
Yeah.
too. It's one of
Yeah.
our favorite venues. Yeah, I mean, for years I was, and actually part of what Chasing the Dragon is about. For years, I was booking in earlier incarnations of the band. We'd go out for a week or 2 weeks, drive out to like Iowa and play at a bar,
Yeah.
or drive all over Ohio and Michigan and down south, and a lot of driving and hit or miss because some of the bars would be empty because they didn't know who we were,
Hmm.
and just a lot of energy spent. I would have dreams where I would just be driving down a highway at night, not even knowing where I'm going, and to some shack in the middle of nowhere, you know, and, and that's part of the imagery of the song. But yeah, so I did that for a long time, and then I realized that we got to really pick our shows more carefully and really make it a big event and promote it well and do it the right way. Make each show count. So yeah.
For those people who are not on the East Coast, where is the Williams Center?
Sorry. Yeah. So the Williams Center is in Rutherford, New Jersey. That's where Progstock is held every
Right.
year. In
Hmm.
October, it's the biggest progressive rock festival in the Northeast. But now they have started a concert series there. So periodically, they will feature prog acts and put together an evening of music at the Williams Center. And it's a really cool venue. There's a lot of different smaller spaces and where they have smaller acts. Another thing we're going to be doing, the actual Progstock is the weekend of October 20th. We're
Yes.
doing a listening party. Let me look at the date. It's going to be
I think it's the 20th on the
Sunday
20th.
morning. It's
Yeah.
well, the festival is the 18th, 19th, 20th.
Hmm.
Sunday morning, the 20th, 10 a.m. Jason's going to be there to represent, and I'm going to zoom in probably from the airport. But we're going to do a listening party, and the CDs will be available for the first time at Progstock, physical copies.
Hmm. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I can say this, even though I've not had the joy of seeing you guys live in performance, the live stuff that you have put out is just spine tingling. It is that
Wow.
good.
Thank you.
And I mean, beyond the music that we get on the CD, the download, whatever, which is just amazing, but you guys have a real fire when you perform live.
Yes.
And I look forward personally to the opportunity of being able to see you at some point or another.
Thank you.
No, I will not make you drive out to some shack in the middle of Indiana.
For you, I would do it.
Yes, that's it. I have the extra bedroom right here.
There you go. Yeah. Well, speaking for myself, I love to perform. I've always been a ham since I was a little kid. I just love to play in front of an audience. Maybe that's why I didn't go into classical music because I couldn't imagine just sitting there and in an orchestra. I got to be out there, and I love the spectacle of it. I love the Clark Kent versus Superman element of rock and roll.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure Jason probably feels the same
Yeah,
way.
same way. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it has been such a pleasure to talk with you guys. I have had the opportunity to hear the CD ahead of time, one of the benefits of doing this sort of thing,
Mhm.
and it is great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have loved what you've done in the past, and I think you've taken it up to another level, to use a cliche, but it really is an amazing CD, and it's called Imposters. And boys and girls, they are not imposters in any way, shape, or form. This is the real deal. So, Jason Gianni and Joe Deninzon, thank you so much for being with us today on Sonic Perspectives.
Thanks so much, Mark.
And thank you for all your support over the years. You've been a good
Yeah.
friend to all the people we've worked with, and just a good, amazing person. And your support means so much to us.
Well, thank you for that. I'm
Um,
Mark
can,
Boardman, and this is Sonic Perspectives. And for the latest and most in music news, reviews, and interviews, tune in to sonicperspectives.com.